Hey Bayek, it's me Ian, and in today's video I'm going to look at this. This is The League of Gentlemen from 1960. What a great year that was, as you might well know. Yes. Anyhow, I'd just like to say before I get into it, a big thank you to Tony. He sent me this film along with some others through Amazon, and thank you so much, Tony. It's just a great film. You know what I like, don't you? And absolutely love this. Anyhow, let's get into it. It's, of course, a British film. It's 116 minutes long. It's 86% on Rotten Tomatoes. I think they may be getting it right for once again. It's well thought of, I think, now by critics alike, still at the time and now, definitely. It is a really good example of this kind of British action crime caper comedy film. Yes, there's in comedy as well in here. Wonderful film, and it's just so enjoyable. Anyhow, it's a screenplay by Bryan Forbes. Bryan Forbes directed Whistle Down the Wind, 1961, which we've reviewed and talked about before. What a wonderful film that is. He was also the director of Seance on a Wet Afternoon, 1964. And I think most famously, he was the director of The Stepford Wives, which is just considered a classic. That is from 1975. The film, the screenplay that he wrote was based on The League of Gentlemen, 1958 novel by John Borland. It's interesting that this film inspired in later years a comic book strip. The comic book strip, The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. And I think they made a film in later years, which could well have been Sean Connery's last film. I should have done a bit more research on that. But yeah, I think that is true. Yes, this inspired that comic strip, which led to that film. Yeah. And the comic strip was very successful. Now, it's produced by Michael Relf, and it's directed by Basil Dearden. Now, Basil Dearden, what a great director. Blue Lamp, 1950, inspired the whole TV series starring Jack Warner as Dixon of Dock Green, and all came from that film, The Blue Lamp. And we've got the controversial film Victim, 1961, which he directed, which was a Dirk Bogarde film. And if you remember, the controversial subject of homosexuality was explored in that film. Also, he was in I think this was his last film, The Man Who Haunted Himself from 1970. What a film that is. And that has Roger Moore, a really good film. Unfortunately, he died in a car crash, age 60 in 1971. That's kind of really sad, isn't it? Because who knows, he may have gone on to direct even more great films. But there we are. Now, the film is, I think, dominated in some ways by this cast. It really elevates the cast so much. Well, okay, let's get into it. We've got Jack Hawkins. Jack Hawkins, yes, he plays Lieutenant Colonel Norman Hyde. He's perfect. And what a career he had, going right back to the 1930s, right through into the 70s. And he developed throat cancer, and effectively, he couldn't speak. He did have a voice box, but he continued in the film career. Such was the high regard that they dubbed his voice in. Amazing that he had that regard. You know, people really did love him as an actor. He's great. In this film, his presence is just amazing. You can't help but absolutely love this actor. He was in, The Bridge on the River Kwai, the David Lean classic from 1957. He was in Lawrence of Arabia, 1962. He was in Zulu, 1964. And that later film that I talk about is one I love with Vincent Price, Theatre of Blood, 1973. Great actor. Then we got Nigel Patrick, who plays Major Peter Race. Wonderful career. Battle of Britain, 1969, he was in that. And he was also in the Amicus film, Tales from the Crypt from 1972. Wow. I love it. And then we've got Roger Livesey playing Captain Padre McFrost. He had a massive distinguished career, but his major film highlight is in The Life and Death of Colonel Blimp from 1943, which is one of the great, highly regarded, all-time great British films from 1943. He was in that. Yes, fantastic. Then we've got Richard Attenborough, who I could just talk about for hours and hours. He plays Sir Edward Lexie. What can I say about his films? Let's just say Brighton Rock, 1948, The Great Escape, 1963, A 10 Rillington Place, 1971. Was that performance in 10 Rillington Place one of his all-time great performances as an actor? But because he's a director as well. Directed Young Winston, 1972, Gandhi, 1982, Cry Freedom, 1987. Some more films, and Shadowlands, which I have to mention, 1993. Such a sad loss when he went. Yeah. As I actually met him. Well, I didn't meet him as such, but I saw him in the filming, and I saw him speaking at our local town hall. Yes. Then Brian Forbes plays Captain Martin Porthill. Again, it's interesting because he was a screenplay writer I've talked about of this, but he also was an actor. He had a career as an actor. And Wooden Horse, 1950, British war film, prisoner of war film, you know, fantastic, 1950. And then Guns of Navarone, what a war film that was. That's from 1961. Then we have Kieran Moore playing Captain Stevens. He was in a couple of interesting films. He was in Dr. Blood's Coffin, a horror film from 1961. Also the classic The Day of the Triffids, 1962. Love that film. Then we've got Norman Bird. Norman Bird, he keeps popping up, doesn't he? He plays Captain Frank Weaver. Whistle Down the Wind, of course, we reviewed that recently. He was in that from 1961. And also, he was in Victim. Yeah, he was in the controversial film Victim, 1961. He was in Maniac, this Hammer film from 1963. Cash on Demand, of course. Yes, 1961. He was in that. Hands of the Ripper, another Hammer classic. And just to round it all up, he was in Shadowlands as well. I didn't see him though on that location. Then we've got Terence Alexander playing Major Rupert. What a name. Rupert Rutland Smith. Wow, these are so much British names, aren't they? He was in Carry On Regardless. Yes. He was also in Waterloo. I absolutely love Waterloo. It's another of my favourite historical films. And he was in The Vault of Horror, another anthology series from 1973. Wow, yes, you can't say further than that. Now, I've not really mentioned any female characters. They have a very... There is a few. The one that sticks out, I would say, was Nanette Newman, who, incidentally, is married to Brian Forbes. She was. And she's still with us. She was in, I think, famous in many ways in terms of films. The L-Shaped Room, 1962. That's a well thought of film. And more up to date, linked with her husband, she was in The Stepford Wives as well, 1975. There is also a small appearance by another actor who I really like, Patrick Wymark. He plays Wiley. It's not a very big appearance, but it's him, and you can't help but love Patrick Wymark. What a great history of films he was in. And then there's an uncredited, so he's not on the credits, but it's very clearly him, and it's Oliver Reed. And it's quite a strange film. He's playing like this gay sort of bloke who's very effeminate, and he just pops in, and it's kind of a funny comedy thing, and he pops out. That's it. We get him right. So I think we'll get into what the film is about. This film, well, it's a crime caper, isn't it? Basically, well, Jack Hawkins' character, Lieutenant Colonel Norman Hyde, he's quite disgruntled the way he got dismissed from the army. Well, not for wrongdoings or that. They sort of retired and got rid of him, and not very pleased with it. So what he decides, he kind of wants, it gives him an idea that he'd like to get back, I think. And he thinks about the perfect crime people who could do this, not your gangsters and the people that you see, would be treating it like in the army. So all his recruits are people who are all ex-army, all officers, gentlemen, you see, yes. But all have had some kind of dismissal from the army. They've all had various things that they did wrong, disgraced officers, basically. And he's going to utilise all their skills and put them into this bank job. Yes, that's his plan. And it's a very good take on it, and it seems like, as usual, the perfect plan. And we see all this develop, him getting the recruits, and the whole story is fantastic. And as it develops, you get to know and see the characters, and you get into the capers. I mean, most of them need the money as well. They've all fallen into bad times, I think, through the fall. It's amazing seeing it. But it's so British, this film, you know. But there is the humour there. That's why it's got the humour, as well as the action and the drama. I mean, this is what makes it such a wonderful film. I'm not going to give away the ending, but it's a great ending, I suppose. Some people might be disappointed in the ending. I wasn't. I liked it. Location were in London. Again, if you're into nostalgia, you gotta love it. You've got to really love it. You have. I couldn't help but love it. Just seeing all that in the 1960s. It's just that era before things really get into the swinging 60s. It's still the post-war period. You know, even the soundtrack, you hear this sort of jazzy bits of music. Incidentally was composed by Philip Green. Yeah, you get all that. And it works. I love this film. Highly recommended for the period. Really is. Let me just show you. Here's the DVD of it. Look at this. Fantastic. And there's the back. Yeah. Absolutely loved it. Highly recommended. And thank you so much, Tony, again. And that's it. So, hopefully, you've enjoyed this video. If you haven't, well, what's I going to do about it? But please subscribe, and then we'll let you know when, you know, if you're new to the channel, we'll let you know when I produce videos, and you might like them or you might not. And you can see all what I produce, and all sorts of things on films, and TV, and just nostalgic things as well as some modern stuff. If you like this video, please give it a like. Say it helps with algorithms so that hopefully more people might enjoy my videos I produce. And if you've got any comments, please put your comments down. I love to honestly reading your comments. I do. Thank you so much. That's it, really. That's it. Yes. Okay. So all I gotta say is I'll see thee again.